This past June, I had dinner with Teddy and Ashley, and we went to Montana's because Ashley wanted to go to Montana's. And we were talking about the wedding and talking about the relationship, and I had my little notebook. And I was taking all these notes about why they like each other and all these different things. And at the end of the 3-hour dinner, I made a little notation. They're holding hands and kissing each other a lot, like a lot. They're pretty good so far here. They're just holding hands, although I saw Teddy kiss Ashley's hand a while there, so don't worry. Good things come to those who wait. Right off the hop, they met through our local high school chaplain, Lena. I believe Lena is here today. So we're all here because of Lena, so thank you very much, Lena. I don't know if you know this. Lena originally tried to set Teddy up with another girl who was not Ashley. Dun, dun, dun. Apparently, that didn't go well right off the hop, and so there was a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of passive aggressiveness. You want to go for coffee? Why do you presume I like coffee? Stuff like that. He brought up beer, she brought up alcoholism. It was really awkward and tense. Hopefully she's not here, because that would be weird. So that didn't work out well, and so Teddy went to Lena and said, "Do you know another girl?" She said, "Well, yeah, I know this parish secretary at St. James, and occasionally she'll go to the high school and give talks with the local pastor." And so they set this thing where the talk would be given at Teddy's classroom, and so we gave the talk there. And the whole time, Lena was going up to Ashley saying, like, "There's Teddy, isn't he cute?" and this sort of stuff. So it was adorable. And later on, they exchanged contact information, and they went on a series of dates, right? So a bunch of things which came through in terms of like them sharing their story about these dates, right? So immediately, Teddy was enamored by Ashley, her honesty, her sincerity, her being so genuine. Oh, and by the way, she's really pretty, stuff like that. And Ashley, for her part, she was really enamored by the fact that Teddy was so compassionate and kind and made her feel safe. And so even now, one of the things she talks about is like, we just love spending quality time together. And I feel safe, I feel like I can be silly, I can be serious, I can be tired, I can be non-tired. And there's a sense of like, I can be myself and experience a certain freedom in the company of this person who loves me. So a really beautiful thing. They also talked about their relationship with God. And so Teddy talked about how a lot of people he knew in the past, in terms of his peer group, cultural Catholics, maybe attending Mass, but not really a sense of the personal relationship with Jesus. But of course, Ashley's all about that. And so he was really enamored with that. And Ashley, the way she framed it was kind of interesting. She loved how he pursued Jesus through his own sense of motivation, but also he had this keen sense of pursuing Jesus with someone else. So they're equally yoked, as you hear in the Bible. So the sense that they're both Catholic for sure, but just equally pursuing Jesus with the same level of enthusiasm and motivation. So really beautiful stuff. At the same time, they were really honest and genuine in terms of the other side of their story. And so Ashley in particular was really open about the fact that because of past relationships, past wounds, many times where she wasn't loved in the way she should have been loved or needed to be loved by her significant other, there was a lot of residual fear and trauma. And so even when they went on their first date, the way she described it was like, I was scared and I was trying not to shake. There was a point later on where pretty quickly Teddy knew that Ashley was the one. At a certain point, the way he framed it to her was like, I want to discern marriage, and I want to discern marriage with you. And the way that Ashley kind of framed it was like, gosh, I just like freaked out. And she was just like terrified. Give credit to her though, she thought, okay, I want to take a chance here. And so pretty shortly after that, they had this conversation, and she just laid it all out. All her past relationships and all the past trauma, all the emotional pain, all these moments where, again, she wasn't loved in the way she wanted to be loved, in the way that she needed to be loved. And just to kind of highlight like how difficult this was for her, the way she framed it was like, I expected that he would say, this is too much. You have way too much baggage, and that's it. And I was like, excuse me, like you expected him to dump you? And of course, Teddy wasn't like that. It was like kindness, compassion, and also a sense of provocation in his own heart. Like here's someone who's being so courageous and so brave and bringing the inside out and being vulnerable in his presence that he started sharing similar things with his own past. And so here was something which was scary and painful and traumatic, but became a source of real bonding and community. It made me think about a bunch of different things, but in no particular order. One thing that comes to mind is this really famous passage by St. Paul, letter to the Ephesians chapter 5. It's one of the options for a wedding ceremony, but almost no one picks it. You'll see in a moment why. Ephesians 5 goes like this. Wives, be submissive to your husbands, So you can see why people don't pick it. There's a translation issue there. So as you know, the gospel was originally written in Greek, and the word which is rendered there as submit, basically the same word to describe the relationship of Jesus Christ to his Father. And you remember that Jesus Christ is the second person of the Trinity, one in being with the Father, right? So it can't imply the sense of like an unhealthy suppression. So it must mean something else. When you look at the entire passage, there's only kind of one commandment, and the commandment is given not to the wife, but to the husband. And the commandment is, husbands, you must love your wives as Christ loved the church. And how did Christ love the church? He died for his church. And the invitation extended to the wife is, okay, wives, entrust your hearts to your husband's loving care. That's the gist of it. So you put it all together, the whole idea, this is the ideal of Christian marriage. Wives, they're watching their husbands. And the whole idea is that husbands are supposed to take the initiative to die to themselves out of love for their wives. And if the wife sees that and believes in it, then she will choose, very naturally, to entrust her vulnerable heart to him. And that's the ideal of Christian marriage. You see this, for example, there's a really great sculpture by this guy named Timothy Schmaltz. It's the Holy Family. And what you see is St. Joseph, and he's embracing certainly Mary, but also Jesus. So you see St. Joseph with his big arms enveloping Mary. And the whole idea is that within a sense of comfort and peace and sacrificial love, Christ is born. And so, I thought about that obviously because when you think about Teddy receiving Ashley's vulnerable heart, yeah, Ephesians 5 all the way. So they're off to a rocking start, That said, I want to gush on Ashley a little bit. So obviously I know Ashley better than Teddy just because of the passage of time, and also we work together and stuff. And I'm going to embarrass Ashley a little bit here, but so be it. I'm kind of blending stories here, but I remember a long time ago, Ashley, without using so many words, was just like really marveling at the fact that Teddy was receiving her in the way that I just talked about. In her vulnerability, despite her fear, all these things. Here's this guy who loves me, and is kind, and is compassionate when I expect to be rejected as I was rejected before. And it's so wonderful. I feel safe in his presence, and I feel like I have the freedom to just be. And that's a glorious thing. And the way she summed it up was like, Teddy is a unicorn. And I didn't say it right away, but I waited, and I was like, you know what, honey? You're a unicorn. A couple things come to mind, right? Like, Ashley is just so good, radiant in her goodness. You almost kind of feel bad. As you know, we do these talks, myself, Ashley, sometimes Chris as well, and these talks kind of evolve. And so there was a time when we would visit the high schools and just come up with a whole bunch of preset questions, and that became the basis for these talks. So we used to kind of sit in the office and go over these preset questions and kind of spitball back and forth. And one of the questions was, what do you do? What do you do when you're feeling stressed? And Ashley said, I go to Jesus. And Chris and I looked at each other and it's like, good for you. That's amazing. I often make fun of Ashley for a whole bunch of things, but one recurring thing, it's not even really an insult, it's a complimentary insult. It's like, you're kind of like the Blessed Virgin Mary. And what I mean by that is not just her radiant goodness, but there's this particular thing which people don't often think about when it comes to holiness. So holiness is all about belonging, for sure, but take it one step further. If you're holy, and we're all called to holiness, there's a part of you, and a part of your identity, and a part of your heart, which is set apart for the Lord. And so what happens if you pursue holiness to its logical end, in terms of giving God everything and holding back nothing, what happens is you feel kind of lonely. Partially because other people don't tend to pursue the same thing, but also because that part of you which is hidden and mysterious and reserved for God alone, that part of you begins to flourish, and you start to realize that that's my true self. And because it's reserved for God alone, I'm going to encounter misunderstanding. And you see this all the time, right? Think again, for example, the Blessed Virgin Mary, where she has the visitation from the angel Gabriel. You're invited to be the mother of the Savior. She says yes, and so she is the mother of God. But she has always appearances of being a harlot, And even St. Joseph doesn't see it at first. Okay, here's my wife, and she's pregnant, not by me, and so like, what's up with that? And so I'll send her away quietly. And here's God sending an angel saying, like, don't. This seems like the worst thing that ever happened to you, but you're in the presence of the holiest woman to ever live. So don't be afraid to take Mary as your wife. The other thing that comes to mind, Ashley is so good at just being receptive. She's really receptive of like everyone. When she listens to you, she's really listening to you. When she asks you how you're doing, she actually cares about the answer. So you get the sense that she's a real friend. If Ashley's your friend, blessed are you. The example that comes to mind, there's this movie which came out a while ago. No one's ever seen it. Maybe you have. I shudder to think. A Man Named Otto. Has anyone seen it? Nope, of course not. This is where movie lovers go to die. That's all right. The movie starring Tom Hanks, he's recalling his wife who died. There's all these memories, all these recollections in the movie where it's him, his younger self, played by Tom Hanks' real son, remembering all these dates with the woman who will eventually become his wife. And there's two scenes which kind of come to mind. So there's this one moment where they're on their first date, and they're at a steak place, and she's having a steak with all the fixins, and she's enjoying it and stuff. And all of a sudden, she looks over at him, and I think, if I recall correctly, all he has is a salad. And it's a small salad. And he's like picking away at the croutons. And she's like, "You're not going to eat anything?" And he's like, no, I already ate. And she puts down her cutlery. And she says, "Why?" He's like, "Well, because I wanted you to be able to order whatever you wanted." The fact is, I lied to you. I said I applied to this job at the military and I got it, and I didn't. I failed because I failed my physical. I wasn't strong enough to get that job. And now I have no job, I have no money, I have no future. I probably shouldn't even be here. So he gets up and he's about to leave, and she grabs him by the hand and kisses him in front of the entire restaurant. Everyone starts applauding. She recognized the moment and she rose to the occasion. And you fast forward to later on in the film, and so this is like years later. They've been dating for a while, and it's basically in the immediate aftermath of his graduation. So they're in their car, everyone's around them, and everyone's celebrating. He has a certificate for like engineering or something, and they're in the front seat of the car. He's in the driver's seat, she's in the front passenger seat, and they're both looking at this thing. And it's like his achievement, but it's their achievement as well. Sharing in the joys, sharing in the sorrows. And all of a sudden he has this confidence that he didn't have before. Before I had no job, before I had no money, I'm a loser, why would anyone love me? And yet here's this girl who loved me in spite of myself. And now I have the means to get a meaningful job, a living wage. And so he finds this courage, but he's not all the way. So he asks this question, but he doesn't look at her. So the way he phrases it is like, I was thinking maybe, possibly, you want to get married? And she stops. And she says, no. Like, look at me. And ask me correctly. And it's not the sense of imposition, it's not the sense of shame. It's like, no, I know you. I know you're scared, and I know you're struggled with all your life with shame. But I don't want you to be afraid with me. You must not feel shame or fear with me. So look at me and ask me correctly. So he turns and he looks at her. Will you marry me? And he can barely get the words out, and she starts honking and like, yes, yes, yes. It's an amazing, beautiful thing. In terms of past hurts that Ashley kind of cited with regards to relationships and emotional pain, well, we've been friends for a while, and I've had the privilege of journeying with her through some of these relationships, and a couple things come to mind, Cardinal Newman, he says, we have this romantic idea that suffering makes everyone better. He goes, it does not. Because of what Christ suffered on the cross, suffering is transformed forever, so it has this enormous power to change you and transform you on a heart level. So it has that power, but most people, they can't handle it, and they back away and they collapse in the face of pain. It's not to say the sweet spot is to not experience pain. The cross is always the cross. But what I'm always looking for, to be honest, as a priest when I'm journeying with people, it's not so much like the absence of pain, because again, the cross is the cross. It's kind of a binary option. As you carry the cross and you labor through the difficulties of life, are you becoming bitter? Are you turning in on yourself? Or are you not? And you might be honest, again, in terms of the self-disclosure. This is really painful. I'd rather this not be the case. When is this going to be over? Yes, for sure. Nothing wrong with that. But are you becoming bitter? Are you turning in on yourself? And Ashley never becomes bitter. So I tell her, honey, you're doing okay. I remember talking to Ashley about, this can be embarrassing for you. I asked her a long time ago, well, we were just making chit chat. I'm like, what's your favorite Disney movie? And she said, well, two, Moana and Encanto. And I thought two things. First of all, that's the wrong answer. But secondly, like, why? And what she said was that in both movies, there's a girl who's trying to save her family by herself. There's a girl who's trying to save her family by herself. And so she still walked into that space. She's convinced herself that those are her favorite movies. It reminds me of, remember when Will Smith hit Chris Rock during the Oscars? This is going somewhere, right? So, and we all saw that, and we're like, whoa, what's happening there? So Chris Rock, he told a joke that was insulting Will Smith's wife. And then Will Smith came up and smacked Chris Rock. Right? A lot of commentary in the aftermath of that. And I remember what happened was someone said, you know, if you read Will Smith's biography, what happened was that he recalls a moment when he was young, when his father would beat his mother. And the father hit the mother once so hard that she fell to the ground and she was bleeding out of her mouth. And he said in his autobiography, when he's like 50 or something, like, everything I've done since then in terms of being like Will Smith, like famous, wealthy movie star, proactive and reactive, all that is meant to be an apology to my mother for not being strong enough to defend her against my father. Now, you hear that. Like, what do you want to say to the young Will Smith? What do you want to say to Ashley? It's not your fault. And it was never your fault. The devil, it's funny how he works. He's the accuser, right? So he twists things in terms of what is actually true. So a lot of times what will happen is that he'll throw into your face something which is a weakness or like a sin or something, but in reality it's your highest virtue. It's your strength. So recurrently there's this thing which plays out in Ashley's heart where it's just like, if only you cared more, if only you loved more, if only you were more. But in reality, you've always been enough. I rejoice in the fact, and I celebrate the fact that you have someone in your life who will remind you every single day that you're beloved and beautiful and cherished and good. But the reason why he does that is not because he's nice, it's because it's true. So God bless you both in your marriage.